All right, good morning, everybody. What's going on? Woke up this morning and I just found out that Jake Paul Hasim Rahman Jr. has been canceled, literally 1 week away from the fight. Fight was supposed to take place this upcoming Saturday. Obviously, I think people know this news now, and it was because of a weight issue. Apparently, the New York State Athletic Commission was monitoring Hasim Rahman Jr.'s weight because they were concerned about him losing so much weight and they wanted to make sure he did it in a safe manner. So on July 7th, he weighed 216 pounds. And now, with a week away, he only lost 1 pound and he weighs 215 pounds, right? So they do not believe that he could lose more than 10% of his body weight, or he should lose more than 10% of his body weight in a 1 week period, right? So they suggested and recommended that the fight be at 205 pounds. Jake Paul agreed to that. And according to Jake Paul, they're saying Hasim Rahman did not, and he was adamant about the fight being at 215. Now, we're only hearing one side of the story here, and we are not hearing Hasim Rahman Jr.'s side. So you have to ask yourself, is there other information that is not being presented to us, right? Dana White was interviewed after his UFC event yesterday, and he was asked about this fight, and he had suggested that less than $500,000 of revenue was sold in ticket sales, right? So he implied that they were having problems selling the tickets. I don't know how well this fight was tracked to do on pay per view, but apparently Dana White suggested that there was more to it than just Hasim Rahman Jr.'s weight. That maybe the event was struggling financially and it wasn't going to produce the money needed to turn over a profit here. There's no way of me knowing that. That's just Dana White. I'm sure you can call the commission, and I may probably do that tomorrow when they open, and ask them how many tickets were actually sold for this event, if it was sold out. And I can also probably go online and just, you know, go to the Madison Square Garden's website and just see how many tickets were sold. Anyone can do that, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if this fight was not doing well in terms of sales for tickets. And obviously, we don't know pay per view wise, but um, there doesn't really seem to be a big buzz for this fight. I know guys like me and others who are, boxing analysts are talking about it, but it's not really being talked about too much mainstream, right? So you could argue that maybe again the event just wasn't generating enough revenue and there wasn't enough interest behind the fight. But I know a lot of people are going to come out and say, well, Rockman signed the contract to come in at 200 pounds. It's his fault, blah, 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 blah. And again, you know, I understand when you sign a contract, you agree to do a certain thing. But I was looking at Rockman Jr. even when I interviewed him about 2 weeks ago. His face looked kind of lean. To me, he looked lean, and even in the training footage I saw him, he looked very lean. He looked trim. He looked in shape. And if he did everything he could do, if he stripped his body down as low as it could go, and then when he steps on the scale and that number comes up at 215 pounds, then you can't outrun Mother Nature. You can't beat Mother Nature. You can only do what your genetics allow you to do, right? And unless he was going to take drugs to get down to that weight, maybe his body just would not allow him to go below 215 pounds. So to have him had to change the weight to 205, why not make it 210? And again, he was going to rehydrate to probably 215. He was probably going to be 215 pounds in the ring anyways. So you have to ask yourself why there was so many restrictions put on Hasim Rahman. They gave him a virtual 3-week notice for the fight. So he had like a 3-week training camp for the fight. Then they put this weight rehydration clause in the contract, right? So they did put all these stumbling blocks in the way of Hasim Rahman Jr. If, as Hasim Rahman Jr. said, when you sparred me, I was like 225, 230, and supposedly you beat me up at that weight. So if you really did beat me up at that weight, then why not fight me at that weight? So I'm going to have an unpopular opinion here, right? Because it's just, again, this is just my opinion. I'm going to take probably a stance that a lot of people aren't going to take. And I'm going to say that, Jake Paul, he was the one that pulled out of this fight because I think he was concerned about fighting Rahman being too big. And to have to put Rahman in such a weakened state, right? Is that really fair? And then the argument's going to be, well, Rahman agreed to it. And I understand all that. But once again, his body, to me, he looked very lean. And in my opinion, he possibly went as low as he could go. And when he stepped on the scale, that number was 215, right? So if he was to go down to 200 pounds the day before the fight, would that have been safe for him? Is his health and his life worth any amount of money, right? Because we've seen guys step on the scale, pass out, right? We've seen guys faint, right? So essentially, what did Jake Paul want out of this fight? Did he want to be getting in the ring with a corpse, right? So did it make sense? And even the commission stepped in and said, hey, this guy can't make 200 pounds. Let's make it 205, right? And we haven't heard from Hasim Rahman yet. So we don't even know what really happened behind the scenes. We don't know. We're being told that he said that he can't get down to 205 pounds in a week. So he's essentially being asked to lose 10 pounds in a week, right? Could that be done from an obese person? Sure. But if a guy's already in shape and he's relatively lean, can he lose 10 more pounds in a week? A guy who's already been training, right? And worst case scenario, if they really wanted to put the fight on, why not just postpone it a couple weeks, right? Give him more time to get down to the weight. You're giving this guy, he weighed 224 pounds in his last fight, and he was saying after the fight, he weighed about 234, right? So you're asking this guy to lose 34 pounds in 3 weeks, okay? 34 pounds in 3 weeks, basically. So 34 divided by 3, he's got to lose 11 pounds every week for 3 weeks, right? They say you shouldn't be losing more than 2 pounds a week. So when a fighter starts a camp, right, usually the first week he'll probably lose 5 pounds of water, right? So fighters are usually, on average, like 17 pounds above their weight class. So then you subtract probably 5 pounds from that. So they got 12 pounds to lose, right? 12 pounds to lose, essentially, in 7 weeks. So you divide that by 7. It's roughly 2 pounds a week after that, right? So they were asking this guy to lose 10 pounds a week in a 3 week, or almost 11 pounds actually, a week in a three week period. I don't care what the guy agreed to. That's just ridiculously unhealthy, right? That's just ridiculously unhealthy. And I think a better compromise would have either been make the weight 210, right? Make the weight 210, which would have been somewhere in the middle, right? Or just postpone the fight 3 more weeks. See if he could come down lighter. But at the end of the day, Jake Paul was the one who put the kibosh on this. I don't know how accurate Dana White's reports are, and I'm sure they are accurate because I didn't take the time to really do the research. But Dana White, is in contact with a lot of these people. He works with these commissions. He probably made a call to the commission and asked them, "Hey, how much tickets were sold?" He probably called the Madison Square Garden. I'm sure he knows people in the Madison Square Garden. How much tickets were sold? And I suspect his numbers are accurate. And maybe the event wasn't doing well. Maybe the event wasn't doing well, and it was projected to lose a lot of money. So that's why 1 week out they pulled the fight, right? So you have to ask yourself, first Tommy Fury, now Hasim Rahman. Um, is it always the opponent's fault here, or is it just Jake Paul really not having a great team around him, really being too hard to deal with and negotiate with? Are these demands too much? So you really have to ask yourself, who's to blame here? Jake Paul was the one who said, I'm not fighting you. Rahman didn't. It's being reported that Rahman pulled out. Rahman didn't pull out. Jake Paul canceled the event. He's the promoter. He canceled the event. And all those, and now he's going to try to push it all on Rahman and say it's all Rahman's fault, Rahman Jr.'s fault. But he was the guy that put the kibosh on the event. He's the guy that put the kibosh on the event. So I don't care what Rahman Jr. signs. I'm just looking at biology. I'm looking at kinesiology, right? I'm looking at health. And I don't give a fuck who you are, unless you're taking major drugs. And even if you are taking major drugs, it's not safe at all to ask somebody to lose 34 pounds in 3 weeks. That's a lot of fucking weight. All right? 34 pounds in 3 weeks. Basically telling this guy to go on a starvation diet. And then even yesterday, I'm watching the Fight Camp 360 or whatever for the event. And Jake Paul's sitting there bragging about, he's at a barbecue, he's eating cheeseburgers. And then he's saying, oh, well, Hasim Rahman can enjoy his water because that's about all he can eat. So they knew what they were doing to Hasim Rahman Jr. They knew that they were going to get the worst version of Hasim Rahman Jr. in that ring on August 6th, right? The worst version. And then you're sitting there saying, I'm fighting a heavyweight, and Hasim Rahman Jr. is 100% right. You're not fighting a heavyweight. You're fighting a depleted cruiserweight who has no business even fighting at cruiserweight. Guy 6'3", he's got a big frame, and at 215, he looks as ripped as he could probably be. He looks at 215, this guy's stripped down, right? What do you want him to do? Cut off a leg, right? And then you give the guy 3 weeks notice. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. So I would love, and I'm going to try to get Hasim Rahman Jr.'s side of the story. I'm reaching out to his people, seeing if I can get another interview with him. I interviewed him a couple weeks ago. So I'm dying to see what he has to say about all this, because I got to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of things that aren't being revealed here. I don't trust Jake Paul. I don't believe Jake Paul. They want to sit there and say how dishonest and how, underhanded and shady Hasim Rahman is for tricking everybody and agreeing to do something and then flipping the script and not going through what he agreed to originally. But again, we have to ask ourselves about Jake Paul too. What did he leave out of the story, right? Because I don't believe his version of the sparring sessions. I really don't, right? And then he's showing edited clips of the sparring session, trying to make Hasim Rahman Jr. look bad, right? So I'm saying to myself, what else is this guy leaving out of the story? What's really going on here? And then, when you look at a girl like Amanda Serrano turning down a rematch with Katie Taylor, right? And now she's fighting this girl, Brenda Carbajal, at 126 in a very insignificant fight, right? So now she loses out on a payday, right? And she could have had a nice payday in a rematch against Katie Taylor. So now what happens here now? Again, another thing Dana White said is, Jake Paul needs to get some boxing people around him. He's basically being managed by an accountant, right? He's got an accountant running his MVP promotional outfit, right? So somebody dropped the ball here. Somebody on Jake Paul's side dropped the ball here. I'm curious to see what Steven Espinosa is going to say. I'm sure Showtime's not happy either. Like 1 week out, they couldn't figure something out to get this event on. This is a bad look for everybody. Everybody loses money here, right? The whole undercard loses money. And Jake Paul could have just said to himself, you know what? I'll take the L here in terms of finances. It's a week out. You know what? A lot of people are dependent on me. A lot of people are on this card. A lot of people who put their time forth to get me ready for this fight, right? A lot of people did, put a lot of time and effort to get Jake Paul ready, and a lot of people behind the scenes put a lot of time and effort to get this fight and this promotion ready as well. So you could have saved the show and just said, you know what? Okay, I'll fight the guy at 210, right? I'll fight the guy at 210. That would have been a better compromise. But again, we don't know the whole story. We're only getting what Jake Paul said. Let's see what the actual article says. Dana White said they sold under 1 million in tickets, and he suggests that Jake Paul canceled his upcoming fight due to struggles with ticket sales and not because of Hasim Rahman Jr.'s weight. And again, they knew 3 weeks ago. That Rahman Jr. was 216 pounds because the commission was monitoring it, right? They knew that, right? And then they wait exactly a week away. Like usually when a fight is canceled a week away, usually it's because of a serious injury that just happened, or more often than not, a lot of times it's due to financial reasons, right? So Rahman Jr. is not injured. Jake Paul is not injured, right? So we have to kind of suspect that maybe Dana White's got some good information here. And again, I'm going to call the commission tomorrow. I'm going to do some research and look on some of these websites to see if Dana White is correct here. But something is fishy here, to be perfectly honest with you. Something is fishy here. So it says Rahman weighed 216 pounds on July 7th and reportedly offered assurances to Paul's team that he was on track to make the weight. Make weight at the weigh-in on August 5th. However, Paul's camp claimed that it became clear that these assurances were not made in good faith, right? It says that, all right. So Jake Paul called an emergency press conference, posted a video to his Twitter account where he branded Rahman unprofessional before immediately changing his bio to read Hasim Rahman Jr., Tommy Fury were both too afraid to fight me, and I'm not the real boxer. Alrighty, folks. This is all the quotes. Alrighty, folks. Emergency press conference said, you may have seen the news. Rahman Jr. has pulled out of the fight. This is not a joke. I'm devastated. I cannot believe this. We just found out the news. All right. And he goes, this is just another case of a professional boxer, just like Tommy Fury being scared to fight me. It's clear as day that these guys have been so unprofessional to work with, looking for any excuse, such as more money out of the event to coerce us into doing things. Right? So I want to address this whole money thing too, right? I want to address this whole money thing. So he's constantly complaining about how Rahman Jr. was asking for more money, but wasn't it him that's sitting there talking shit about the UFC for not paying fighters? So Hasim Rahman Jr. is saying he's getting paid less than half of any one of Jake Paul's previous opponents. And those guys are making like $500,000. So if he's getting less than half, you can suspect maybe he's only getting 150, right, to 200,000. And Jake Paul's guarantee is like 3 million, right? So you can't be a champion for fighter pay and then fight a guy and get paid 3 million plus pay-per-view upside. So Jake Paul could have made anywhere from $5 to $10 million for this fight. Probably conservative number would have been 5 or 6 million. And then this guy is only going to be making 150 to 200,000. So how fair is that? Look at the discrepancy in pay. This guy should actually be rewarded more because he's the guy who's taking it on short notice. He's the guy who's got to lose all this weight in a short period of time. He's the guy that had all these stipulations in his contract, but yet he gets paid the least. So is Jake Paul a hypocrite here? Is he full of shit? Does he really give a shit about fighter pay? And then he goes and offers Hasim Rahman Jr. such a paltry purse in comparison to these other opponents. And you can even argue that Hasim Rahman Jr. is more credible than any one of Jake Paul's previous opponents. I mean, he was considered quote unquote a real boxer when these other guys weren't. Right? He's the guy who had a rehydration clause when these other guys did not. He's the guy that was asked to drop 34 pounds in 3 weeks where these other guys were not. And yet he gets the shittiest deal out of everyone. So is Jake Paul full of shit? Is Jake Paul a fraud? Is Jake Paul telling the truth here? Or did Jake Paul put the bag, right, before all the fighters on the card? Did he put the bag before all the people behind the scenes working on this fight? Did he put the bag before everyone else? And was he really the selfish one here? Was he really the unrealistic guy here? Was he the guy, right, who was concerned about fighting a 100% fully healthy Hasim Rahman Jr. at his best? So you have to ask yourself, who was at fault here? And I'm going to put the blame, in my opinion, and I stress the words, my opinion, I'm going to put the blame 100% on Jake Paul here, because it's one thing having leverage if you are the quote unquote A side. But once again, I talked about this before. There's such a thing called an unconscionable contract, where someone presents a contract to a person that is 100% ridiculously leveraged against that person, and it's almost unfathomable that the contract could be carried out and upheld because there's so much leverage to one side. It's one thing, again, using leverage, but there's another thing, in my opinion, of abusing leverage. And Jake Paul was abusing leverage here. He was not using leverage. He was abusing leverage, in my opinion. He was abusing leverage, in my opinion, right? He took it to a level that I've never seen before. I've never seen in the history of this sport someone asked to fight on 3 weeks' notice, right? And I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong here. I'm just saying that from my own personal knowledge, and if someone wants to correct me, you let me know if there's ever been a case where someone had to lose 34 pounds in 3 weeks and then had a rehydration clause put on them on top of that. Right? So what Jake Paul was trying to do here was fight Hasim Rahman Jr. at his absolute worst, because he did not want to face the best version of Hasim Rahman Jr. It's quite clear that that was the case. That's, in my opinion, irrefutable. It's pretty clear what he was trying to do. He's trying to fight the worst version of Hasim Rahman Jr. Right? Trying to fight basically a corpse in there. That's what he was trying to do. And it was pretty evident that Hasim Rahman could not do it, right? This is what happens. Now you have to ask yourself, the commission seemed to be the people who were concerned about Hasim Rahman Jr.'s health. They were the ones who were monitoring his weight, right? They were the ones that asked him to step on a scale 3 weeks before the fight to see where he was at. He was at 216, right? And I've seen Hasim Rahman doing his training footage. According to him, he had a nutritionist, he had a strength and conditioning coaches. They pulled out all the stops for this fight. So in my opinion, and again, my opinion, I'm saying how do you know? My opinion, based off of the empirical data that I've seen. Oh, people, well, how do you know? Again, I've been talking to people in the camp, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm best friends with Hasim Rahman. I'm not going to say that I'm an insider. I'm just saying I've been talking and I've been following what's going on behind the scenes, right? From what I've been told and shown, and the footage I've seen, they put out, they probably spent half of the amount of money they were going to earn for this fight on preparation alone. All these people that were brought in. You think these nutritionists are cheap? You think these strength and conditioning coaches are cheap? You know, you're bringing in Yoel Judah for this fight, right? A world-renowned trainer. You're bringing all these people in. So if he didn't have every intention to try to do what he was asked to do here, he evidence suggests that he's spending so much money in preparation. He was probably spending, like I said, a third to half of his purse on preparation alone to get ready for this fight. And you're going to tell me that he tried to pull the wool over my eyes, your eyes, the public's eyes? I'm not buying it. I'm not fucking buying it. I'm not buying it. So I think there's some truth behind what Dana White has said, right? And it's Sunday right now, so I can't call the commission. But I am going to check the ticket sales, right? Let's do a quick search right now and see how much tickets are available right now. Jake Paul, Hasim, Rahman Jr., ticket sales, tickets. Let's see what's available here. Let's go on StubHub. Let's see what's available. And this will tell you, when you look here, how much is available. See what's available here. This is on StubHub, so these is a third party, right? And there's a lot. I'm looking at this stadium right now. I'm looking at the diagram, and all these shaded areas are basically telling you what's available right now for tickets. And more than about, it looks to me, let me see, that there are a lot of tickets available right now for this event. See if I can share this screen here. Let me see. I'll share this screen, and all the shaded areas of the Madison Square Garden are basically tickets that are available, right? And it shows here that, let me share the screen if I can. No, that's not the screen I want to share. See if I can share this screen. Chrome tab. Okay. I'm going to share this screen for you. And look at all these shaded areas. And this will tell you all the tickets that are available right now. So can you guys see the screen here? Look at all the tickets that are available right here. Right? So they virtually have a whole stadium to sell out here. So I think there's a lot of truth to what Dana White is saying here. They couldn't sell this event out. Look at all of the available tickets. Let's take a look at all of the available tickets, right? Look at all the tickets. Let's go down the line. Look at this. Floor 2, 4 tickets, 4 tickets, 8 tickets, 4 tickets. This basically about 90% of the arena hasn't been sold. They haven't sold any tickets, basically. Look at all these tickets that are available. Look at all these tickets. There's a shit ton of tickets available right now. So, and this is from StubHub, right? So this is the secondary market. So when you click on all these things, it tells you how many tickets are available. And there's a shitload of tickets available right now. Look at all of these this area that's showing you how much tickets are available here. Look at everything. There's a lot of tickets available. Unrestricted view right here. 4 tickets. Yeah, so there's a shit ton of tickets that appear to be available still right now for this event. So it appears to be some truth to the rumor that they had an issue with ticket sales right now, if I'm being honest. That's what it appears to me, if I'm being honest. So there's more than meets the eye here. I think there's something fishy going on behind the scenes. I'm going to try to see if I can get an interview with Hasim Rahman Jr., a follow-up interview with Hasim Rahman Jr. to see what's going on here. So Dana White also, again, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier in the video. He said, Jake Paul needs to get some real people around him, real boxing people around him, not lawyers, not accountants. He needs to get some people who are really involved in the business, who have a knowledge of the business, because they seem to have dropped the ball here. They just are having issues. They had issues with this event, and I'm sure they had issues with other events. We're hearing rumors that even the Tyrone Woodley rematch did not do well pay-per-view wise. And again, they're not releasing the pay-per-view numbers, so we don't know what's going on here. And then, a lot of times we don't know how many tickets are being given away. We don't know if the event's being papered. This is all speculation on my part, so don't sit there and say, "B, how do you know? How do you know?" I don't know. I just went on a StubHub website and I saw all those tickets that are still available in all those in all those areas, right? So I think there's evidence out there to suggest that maybe Dana White was right here. And again, like I said, and Dana White wasn't even being a hater about it. He said, I'm not here to shit on anyone. I know how hard it is to do this. Whatever. I'm not happy that they canceled the event. I'm not happy they lost money. He goes, but I heard they sold under $500,000 in ticket sales, right? So you have to ask yourself, if they were to sell that out, to sell out that arena, right? The amount of revenue generated. Let's take a look at Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, live gate. See how much money they generated for that fight. If we could find some information for that. Trying to see if we can find some information for that gate. Because that was supposedly a sellout, according to reports. See if we can find some information on how much that fight generated in revenue. Okay, so that event in ticket sales generated $1,450,180, right? So basically, that event generated 3 times, and again, these tickets are probably a lot cheaper than Jake Paul's tickets, right? So Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. Again, the tickets were a lot cheaper because they wanted to sell it out, right? That fight generated $1,450,180.60 in ticket sales, right? So if these reports are true that Jake Paul versus Hasim Rahman Jr. only generated about roughly $500,000 in ticket sales, right? And those tickets are a lot more expensive, right? So you can surmise that, according to these numbers, if you were to make some rough estimates, that three-quarters of the tickets are still available. Because this event, Taylor Serrano allegedly tripled the amount of sales and tickets that Jake Paul versus Hasim Rahman Jr. did, right? And this is a female fight. Uh, one of the first of its kind. I don't think we've ever seen a female fight. I could be wrong. Generate as much money as this, right? In ticket sales, I don't think we've ever seen a female fight sell out the Madison Square Garden, right? So if Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor generated 1.450, right? And this just speaks to why would Katie Taylor, no, excuse me, not Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor wanted the rematch and she was open to the rematch. Why would Amanda Serrano turn down the rematch and agree to be on a card with Jake Paul and the event sell a third of what her event sold with Katie Taylor? How much business sense does that make from Amanda Serrano? And I feel bad because she's taking advice from someone in Jake Paul who knows nothing about the sport. Well, Jake Paul is smart. Look at how much money he's generated off of YouTube. He's an influencer. Okay, but look, he's not doing well in boxing in terms of having that same amount of power of influence in boxing that he has as being a YouTube influencer. So think about that. Taylor Serrano, I'll show you. Let's open this link. This is a boxing scene. And we're going to share this screen as well. And we'll show you. We'll show you the numbers here. Right? Let's take a look at these numbers here. Right? So let's take a look at these numbers. Taylor Serrano generated $1,450,180.60. Now, if these reports are true about Paul versus Rahman Jr., only $500,000 or less than $500,000 in ticket sales, then they've only done, with a week out, got a week left, they've only done a third of the revenue that Taylor Serrano did. And again, I encourage everybody, go to StubHub and look at all the available tickets. About 85 to 90% of the tickets are still available, right? Right? I'm going to call the commission tomorrow. Or I'm going to call Madison Square Garden tomorrow. I'm going to call the commission. I'm going to see how many, what was the projected attendance going to be. They may know. Or we may not be able to get that information. I apologize because you have to wait till the event's over. But I'm going to do as much research as I can to kind of get an accurate number here on how much this event actually sold. Right? So we probably won't be able. Right? We probably won't be able to get the information, but we can do some research of ourselves and just look at available tickets, and that could give us a good idea of what's going on here. So Jake Paul is not this boxing star that everyone says he is if he can't sell tickets. So shout out to Amanda Serrano. And then they want to, you want to give people want to give him credit for that event. But let's make no mistake about it. Eddie Hearn was the the driving force behind that event. Jesse Reekin said I was going to buy tickets this week. So Jesse Reekin, when you were going to buy the tickets, how much tickets were available? That's what I'm curious to see. shows that a lot were still available. So, am I going to give Jake Paul credit for Amanda Serrano? I'll give him some. I'll give him some. But at the end of the day, Eddie Hearn was a driving force behind that promotion. He's the guy who has experience working with Madison Square Garden. I think that he was the guy who helped make that event successful. And let's not make no mistake about it. A good portion of Katie Taylor fans flew over to support her for that event. So once again, in my opinion, Jesse Rieken says a lot, but my point being, a lot of people buy the week of. Yeah. Well, if you only generated $500,000 of tickets, and I don't even know how much the tickets were. I mean, I think the most expensive tickets were like, let's say they were the same price as Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor. So let's say that they sold 500,000 in tickets, right? And $1 million of tickets were still available, right? So let's just say, for instance, you got $1 million, right? Let's say the average ticket price is like $500. When you consider all of it, we'll be considered. Let's say it's like $450, right? The average ticket price. So $1 million, right? Divided by like 500. So there's still a good amount of tickets left. Still a good amount of tickets left. Right? So if they generated $500,000 in revenue, right? You divide that by about $500. And that place holds about 17, right? So roughly half the stadium is still available. Half the arena is still available, right? There's roughly probably around 7,000 tickets still left for the week of the fight, according to these numbers. If these numbers are accurate, right? So there's about 7,000 tickets left, right? So are they going to sell 7,000 tickets in a week? I don't know. So if you do the numbers, there's roughly 7,000 tickets left, 7 to 8,000 tickets left. If you were to run the numbers, right? Maybe even more. 7 to 8,000 tickets, which is half. So they sold half the arena is going to be empty with a week out. Let's look at some events. Let's look at Jake Paul, Tyrone Woodley, Live Gate. See if we can find some information there. Well, let's see if we can find. Let's see if we can find how many people are in attendance for Jake Paul. Let me see if we can go to the events. We can find. Let's see how many people are actually going to these Jake Paul fights. Let's see if I want to try to find some of these attendances. See if we can get. Let's see. All right. See if we can get some actual numbers here. Last fight they fought at was in Tampa. That fight didn't do that well either. Jake Paul, Tyrone Woodley, 2 attendance. So we can find that. So they're saying that fight sold 18,685 tickets. Let's see the pay-per-view buys. It says Jake Paul's knockout win over Tyrone Woodley reportedly flopped, collecting 65,000 pay-per-view buys on cable and satellite, according to DAZN News. Pay-per-view for the rematch between Paul and Woodley was priced at $59.99, equaling a total of $3.89 million. Right? So when you take into consideration Jake Paul's cut was $3 million, Tyrone Woodley's cut was $500,000, right? And then you got to pay the undercard. They lost money on that fight, right? So if this guy is such a star, so they had a good live gate, but they flopped pay-per-view. So this fight, they were going to take they weren't even going to come close to breaking even on this Hasim Rahman Jake Paul fight. They were going to bomb. Right? This fight was going to be a complete and utter disaster at the box office. Right? So Jake Paul is not this superstar that people are saying he is. He's just not. When it comes to boxing, I mean. Obviously, he's a big-time influencer. We're not going to take that away from him, but there's just not a lot of interest in Jake Paul. He's sitting there telling you, "Oh, I'm the biggest star in the sport of boxing. I'm bringing life to this sport of boxing. This, that, and the third." And he's trying to brag about all this stuff, but his numbers aren't reflecting that, right? His numbers aren't reflecting that, and a lot of people weren't going to buy this pay-per-view. So, in my opinion, there's more than meets the eye here. There's more than meets the eye here. And in my opinion, I believe this fight was canceled. And I believe Jake Paul canceled this fight because they were going to take a bath on it. They were going to lose a shit ton of money. There was no interest in it. At least the Woodley fight, they were able to generate some type of revenue with the live gate, even though the pay-per-views bombed, right? Even though the pay-per-views bombed, they were going to still generate some revenue via the live gate and, not lose as much. But here they were just going to take an utter bath. So I feel more sympathy for a guy like Hasim Rahman Jr., who's losing out on the biggest payday of his career. I feel sympathy for Amanda Serrano, right? I feel more sympathy for all the fighters on the undercard. And no matter how Jake Paul wants to spin this and make Hasim Rahman Jr. look like the bad guy, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I'm not buying it. I'm blaming Jake Paul for this event being canceled. I think he was the guy who pulled the plug. I don't blame Hasim Rahman Jr. one bit. You could say, Beeb, you're ridiculous. You're being biased. He's the guy that didn't follow the contract. But they knew he wasn't going to make weight. If he's 216 3 weeks out, right? If he's 216 3 weeks out, or not even 3 weeks out, let's take a look. Yeah, 3 weeks out. I apologize. Yeah, so if he's 216 3 weeks out, right? If he is coming down, think about it, right? He's 234 when he gets the call. 234 when he gets the call, right? And he's 216. He's 216. So he already lost 18 pounds, guys. He already lost 18 pounds, right? He's already halfway there, right? So that tells you when you lose that amount of weight in a short period of time. Originally, when you're trying to cut weight, right? There's not much more you can do. He virtually depleted himself in that short period of time, starved himself, right? And lost 18 pounds in about 10 days, right? So he had 16 pounds to go, right? 16 pounds to go. And if he only lost 1 pound after that, and he was training the same and cutting his calories the same, and he can only squeeze out 1 pound, right? Then basically that's his number when he's fully depleted. That's his number when he's fully depleted, right? It's like I walk around at about 205, right? About the lightest I can go when I'm fully depleted. And this is me at my worst in terms of strength, whatever. This is me cutting calories to 1,800 a day, doing 2 hours of cardio, right? Doing the weight training, killing myself, basically, taking a little bit of fat burning supplements, right? I can get down to about, at my best, 185, right? So that's 20 pounds, right? So if someone says, Beeb, you got to get down to 175, right? And they're asking Beeb to lose 30 pounds, right? It's physically impossible for me to do so. I could not make 175. And if I did, I'd be a dead man walking. I'm virtually a dead man walking at 185, right? I'll show you a picture of me at 185. This is totally depleted, right? Totally depleted, right? And I'm not trying to make this about me, but I'm just trying to use physical. And again, I'm not a world-class athlete. This is me not even being a world-class athlete, right? So I'll show you me at my being totally depleted. This is me and I'm 6 feet. I'm not 6'3", I'm 6 feet. This is me, right? As totally depleted as I can be, right? You can look at my face here, look at my fucking stomach, right? This is me at 185 pounds, right? This is me at my leanest, right? And I'm just going to show you this. Look at how lean I am there. Look at my stomach right there, right? Look at that. Look at how ripped I am in that picture, right? That's me at 185 pounds, and I'm about 6 feet tall. Now imagine telling me, right? That's me totally stripped down, right? Totally stripped down. And mind you, I'm about that was like 2015-ish, right? Mind you, that was about 6 years ago. I'm 52 right now, right? You know, that's 6 years ago. I'm roughly 46 years old there. That's me, 46, totally stripped down, 185 pounds, right? Look at that. Now imagine telling that person you got to lose an additional 10 to 15 pounds. I'd be dead. I'd be dead. I'd be dead. Right? So we all have our set points. We all have our set points. And you can argue, right, that 215 pounds is Hasim Rahman Jr.'s set point, right? It's his set point. 185 pounds is my set point, right? You can understand when you get that lean, right? Well, B, why'd you do that? All right, I did it because I wanted to see if I could do it. Right? That's why I did it. Right? I wanted to see if I could do it. Right? I wanted to see if I could do it, and I was able to do it. But I'll tell you this, it's the worst I've ever felt in my life. Couldn't sleep, hungry all the time, right? Suffered in other areas that I don't want to go into, right? Because once you take your body out of homeostasis, right? Let's look at some of these pictures of Hasim Rahman right now. Obviously, we didn't see him with his shirt off, but let's just look. Hasim Rahman Jr., right? Let's just look at his body. Now let's look at all three of them together, right? Look at Hasim Rahman Jr. standing next to Jake Paul, Logan Paul, right. I'm gonna show you this picture. This is a picture of all three of them, and supposedly in this picture, right? Supposedly in this picture, he weighed about 230, 225, 230 pounds. And let's take a look at this guy right here. Let's take a look at this guy standing and posing with both Paul brothers. And if you tell me, right, this is a guy 230 who's relatively lean, I'm sure he could probably lose maybe 20 pounds, right? But he's relatively lean at 230, 225, 230. This is him being relatively lean right there, right? Let's take a look. Let's share this screen, right? Let's share this screen. Let's take a look at it, right? Now look at this. And you tell me, he already has abs. It's a guy who has abs, right? He's got abs at 225, 230, right? Now, there's already been 20 pounds taken off that lean frame, right? Take a look at that. Take a look at that. There's 20 pounds taken off that lean frame, right? That's him in camp, right? I would say the lowest he is at best, he's probably at least 225 pounds there, right? And he's got abs at 225, right? He's got abs at 225, and he looks about the same size as Logan Paul, right? I would guess Logan Paul probably walks around at about Logan Paul may be about 210, 215 there, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Jake Paul is roughly about 195-ish, I would guess. He's a little bit smaller than both guys. But look at this guy at 225 with abs, right? Then you take 20 pounds off of that, 215. Where the fuck does the other 15 pounds come from, in my opinion? Right? You wanted to fight a fucking dead man. You wanted to roll a fucking literal corpse in the ring on August 6th. All right? That's what you wanted. That's what you wanted. And now the fight did not meet your financial expectations, did not sell the tickets you wanted it to sell. And now you want to make Hasim Rahman Jr. look like the bad guy. I'm not fucking buying it, bro. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. This was a miscalculation on Jake Paul's part, right? This was total disrespect to Hasim Rahman Jr., right? Obviously, Hasim Rahman Jr. is not the same name that Tyrone Woodley was. I don't know, Ben Askren, how popular was he? You can make an argument that he wasn't that popular. Obviously, fighting the basketball player right? The Gib guy, whatever. But having Hasim Rahman Jr. have to jump through all these hoops and giving him no side, no share of the pay-per-view, no back end pay-per-view money, and only giving him around 150 to $200,000 as a purse, while you're guaranteed yourself $3 million, right? Let's see how much not Katie Taylor. I'm sorry. Let's see how much Amanda Serrano was supposed to get for this fight. Let me see if I can find this. See how much. Let's see how much. See if we can find out how much money she was going to be making. Paul. Let me see how much the purses were. Then they put this stipulation where he'd lose 25% of his purse for every pound. So the minimum, they're saying the minimum he could have earned, and he was willing to take the minimum, right? He was saying that the minimum he was going to be able to earn was 5,000. So do the math. So if he didn't make weight, if there was a penalty, I guess the contract stated the lowest he could make, the lowest he could make with all the penalties added in, right, was 5,000. Let me see if we can get an actual purse. It says Hasim Jr. reveal. Okay. It says Jake Paul's opponent Hasim Rahman could end up with embarrassingly low purse of $5,000 due to strict rules in place. So Hasim Rahman Jr. was willing to take this fight for $5,000. He was willing to take the minimum. You're losing 25% for every pound you're over. So if I come at 204, I get the bare minimum, which is capped. So he's capped at 5,000. So they have to at least pay him $5,000, right? That's how bad they wanted to fuck this guy. So they were willing to pay this guy $5,000 while Jake Paul was going to get $3 million. And this is a guy who's supposed to be for fighter pay. Are you fucking kidding me, guys? What a fucking fraud. This guy is for fighter pay. He's so full of shit, guys. He's so full of fucking shit. So full of shit. I'm for fighter pay. But you will get you had no problem ganking this guy, Hasim Rahman Jr. No fucking problem ganking this guy for pay, right? Get the fuck out of here, man. If you guys want to believe this smokescreen, you can believe this fucking smokescreen. I'm not buying it, bro. I'm not fucking buying this smokescreen. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. I'm not buying this fucking smokescreen. I'm not buying this fucking smokescreen. This guy's supposed to be for fighter pay. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. All right, guys. I'm sure we're going to talk about this later today. We're going to talk about this more on the Ringside Reporter podcast. Make sure you tune in tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern time. I will be back tonight, so make sure you check it out, right? Myself, Eric Lauder, We'll recap this weekend's fight. We'll talk about the latest upcoming fights and the boxing news. I'm going to try and get Rahman Jr. back. I'm working on it right now. I got my guy, Jesse Rican, best PR guy in the business, working on it. And hopefully we can get him soon. We want to hear his side of the story. All right, Beavis out. Talk to y'all soon. Take care, guys.